Welcome to the deep dive. You send us the puzzle pieces, articles, research, things you're obsessed with, and we try to fit them together, see what picture emerges.
Yeah, try to make sense of it all.
Exactly. And today we're diving headfirst into, well, a genuine cosmic mystery, I think. The astronomical alignments of the Great Sphinx of Giza.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Specifically, we're looking at this really compelling idea that it has this deep intentional link to the star Regulus in Leo.
The Lion constellation.
Right. And could this alignment maybe point to some kind of ancient knowledge about, I don't know, vast cosmic cycles, maybe even a warning for us?
It's a big question. And we've got two really interesting sources to help us dig into it. First, there's this research paper, Regulus and the Great Sphinx, astronomical alignments in 3000-2000 BCE.
Okay, so that sounds like the science-y part, the data.
Pretty much, yeah, the nuts and bolts of the astronomy, using actual data to check these potential alignments.
And then the second source.
So building on that, we have part 2 of a document called Celestial Cycles, Catastrophic Memory in the Return of the Lion.
Okay.
And this one takes those astronomical connections and asks the bigger questions, like what did this mean to the ancient Egyptians? And, could it even be relevant today? As a warning, maybe.
Right. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to understand the evidence, linking the Sphinx and Regulus, explore why our sources think this is so important, and then zoom out a bit, look at the broader context of ancient skywatching and these, frankly, intriguing ideas about ancient warnings.
Sounds like a plan. Where do we start? The Sphinx itself.
Let's do it. So that eastward gaze, it's pretty famous.
It is. And the Regulus and the Great Sphinx paper confirms it's very precisely oriented, 90 degrees azimuth.
Which is basically due east, right?
Yeah.
Straight towards the equinox sunrise.
Exactly. Dead on.
Now, traditionally, it's linked to Pharaoh Khafre, maybe around 2500 BCE.
That's the conventional date, yeah.
Yeah.
But the paper does note, there's still academic debate about the exact date, the original purpose. It's not totally settled.
Okay. But the alignment itself, the eastward facing, that seems deliberate. The paper uses this phrase, harmonically phase-locked with the celestial mechanics of the sky. That sounds significant.
It does, doesn't it? It implies real intention, not just, roughly facing east.
Yeah.
It suggests a deep connection to how the sky works.
And that connection isn't just about the sun, according to this paper.
No, exactly. This is where it gets really interesting. The main hypothesis in the Regulus paper is that the Sphinx was also intentionally aligned with Regulus,
Alpha Leonis.
the brightest star in Leo.
The heart of the lion, as it was known.
So you've got a monument shaped like a lion, looking at a constellation shaped like a lion, specifically its brightest star, the heart of the lion.
Right. The symbolism is pretty potent.
It really is. And Regulus wasn't just any star, was it? The paper mentions its regal and cosmological significance. Precisely. Yeah, for many ancient cultures, Regulus was a big deal, a royal star associated with power, with the heavens. So the idea that this lion monument is watching that particular lion star, well, it starts to feel less like a coincidence.
Okay, so how did they actually figure this out? I mean, how do you prove an alignment from thousands of years ago? What's the evidence?
Well, they used data from NASA's Horizon system.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly accurate.
Okay.
Think of it like a super precise time machine to the sky. It can tell you exactly where stars, planets, anything were at any point in the past, viewed from any location on Earth.
Wow. Okay.
So they got the ephemeris data, the exact positions for both Regulus and the Sun, specifically as seen from the Giza Plateau. They even list the coordinates in the paper.
Very thorough. And what time frame were they looking at?
They focused mainly on 3000 to 2000 BCE, with a closer look at 2600 to 2400 BCE, which fits some of the proposed construction dates. But they also checked back further to around 2940 BCE to see if the pattern held up over a longer period. So they weren't just, picking one convenient date.
Got it. So they have the time, the place, the tool. What were they actually measuring? What were they looking for in the sky data?
Okay, so they looked at a specific azimuth window that's the horizontal angle between 89 and 91 degrees.
So like dead east plus or minus 1 degree. Very narrow.
Extremely narrow, yeah. And they looked at the altitude, the height above the horizon, between 0 and 25 degrees, basically just above the horizon.
Okay.
They were specifically looking for when Regulus would appear in that narrow eastward window near the horizon, right around dawn. And crucially, what the sun was doing at that exact moment.
Okay, makes sense. And did they find it?
They did. The paper includes a table with key dates and times. For instance, around September 2514 BCE
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. local time, The sun was just slightly south of east, about 90.15 degrees azimuth, and fairly low, around 17 degrees altitude. But Regulus, it was almost perfectly east, 89.01 degrees azimuth, and higher up, about 26 degrees, clearly visible in the dawn sky.
Wow, right in the window.
Right in the window. And similar results pop up for other dates they checked, like in 2941 BCE, 2940 BCE, even later, around 2158 BCE.
So wait, across hundreds and hundreds of years,
Yeah.
Regulus was consistently rising in that tiny 1-degree slice of sky, right where the Sphinx was looking, around the time of the equinoxes.
That's exactly what the paper argues. They emphasize that for over 800 years, Regulus reliably appeared in that 89 to 91 degree azimuth corridor during equinoctial dawns.
And it wasn't, like, hidden in the sunrise.
No, that's the key point. The sun was still low enough that Regulus, being quite bright, would have been clearly visible. A kind of herald of the dawn, you could say.
That's pretty compelling for an intentional alignment, not just a coincidence over 800 years.
It's hard to dismiss, yeah. And the paper even points out a specific period between roughly 2940 and 2514 BCE, where Regulus got really close to what they call perfect azimuthal symmetry with the Sphinx's gaze.
Almost dead center.
Almost dead center. Like the star line and the stone line were locked in perfect alignment for centuries.
Okay, so if we accept this, that the Sphinx was deliberately aligned with both the equinoctial sunrise and Regulus, what does that imply? How might the Egyptians have seen it?
Well, the paper suggests thinking of the Sphinx as a dual-phase horizon interface.
Okay, dual phase, meaning two things.
Exactly, tracking two different cycles. The solar cycle, the yearly path of the sun, marked by the equinox, and a sidereal or star-based cycle, marked by the rising of Regulus. And they use this really evocative phrase, the lion watches the lion. They see it as an astronomical encoding of identity, a kind of self-referencing phase lock.
Okay, that's a bit dense. Self-referencing phase lock? Break that down.
Okay, think of it like this. The Sphinx, the lion statue, is looking east. And at a certain time of year, for centuries, the constellation Leo, the lion, with its brightest star Regulus, the lion's heart, rises in that exact direction.
The lion watching the lion. Okay, I get that part.
So it's self-referencing, lion watching lion. And phase lock just means these two things, the statue's orientation and the star's rising point, are locked together, synchronized at a specific point in time, the equinox.
Okay, so the sun marks the seasons, the year. What does Regulus mark, then?
Regulus offers a different rhythm. It's tied to the much slower wobble of the Earth's axis precession. So it acts as a kind of seasonal signal within that vast precessional cycle, a stellar harmonic recurrence, they call it. Two different clocks.
A much longer-term clock, maybe. Could Regulus have been used for timekeeping before Sirius became so important later on?
That's exactly what the paper suggests. It might have been a key pre-dynastic marker. Before Sirius, the dog star became the main herald of the Nile flood in the new year in later Egyptian history. Regulus could have marked an earlier important time.
This really shifts the view of the Sphinx, doesn't it? It's not just this enigmatic statue. It's potentially a really sophisticated piece of astronomical equipment.
Absolutely. The paper argues this Regulus alignment adds a crucial sidereal, star-based layer to understanding Egyptian cosmology. We often focus so much just on the sun.
Yeah.
And it fits, with other ideas out there.
Right.
Like the theory that the Giza pyramids align with Orion's belt, or the astronomical information encoded in things like the Dodera zodiac ceiling.
So the Sphinx is potentially another piece in this huge puzzle of the Egyptians embedding star knowledge into their monuments.
Right. The paper calls it a mythic calendrical machine, even a recursive scalar interface.
Whoa. Okay, recursive scalar interface. That's a mouthful.
Huh, yeah, it is. But it just emphasizes this idea of it being a connection point, right? Between Earth and sky, large scales and small scales, measuring cosmic time using both the sun and the stars.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, this is where the second source comes in, right? Celestial cycles, catastrophic memory, and the return of the lion. It takes this astronomical stuff and goes somewhere else with it.
Exactly. It takes this foundation, the Sphinx, aligned with Regulus, this lion watches lion idea, and explores some, let's say, more speculative, but really thought-provoking possibilities.
Speculative like warnings. You mentioned warnings earlier.
Yeah. Part 2 of that document proposes that maybe these ancient alignments weren't just about calendars or marking seasons. Maybe they had a deeper purpose, like encoding warnings about massive cosmic events.
Warnings? What kind of warnings?
The document suggests they might have been tracking and trying to warn about recurring cosmic threats. Things like, major comet impacts, maybe intense solar flares, asteroid showers, events that could cause cataclysms on Earth.
A kind of ancient early warning system built into stone?
Right.
That's unsettling.
It is a fascinating idea. And this recursion code, the lion watches the lion, becomes central here. It's seen as maybe a key signal, a repeating motif in monuments and myths pointing to these recurring dangers.
So the Sphinx and Leo aren't just marking time, they're marking danger potential.
Potentially. The document highlights another alignment, much further back in time, around 10,500 BCE.
Okay, way before Khafre.
Way before. This is based on precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis. Around 10,500 BCE, the constellation Leo would have been rising heliacally just before the sun on the spring equinox, right where the Sphinx looks.
Okay, and what's significant about 10,500 BCE?
Well, that date is right around the Younger Dryas boundary, a period of incredibly abrupt and severe climate change on Earth, major sea level rises, mass extinctions, a really traumatic time for the planet.
Wow.
So the idea explored is that maybe the Sphinx, oriented to Leo rising at that specific cataclysmic time, isn't just marking the sky, but encoding a kind of cosmic trauma memory. The lion watching Leo becomes a symbol of that event.
So the monument itself could be a memorial almost to a global catastrophe.
That's one way the document frames it, yes. And it connects this to other potential examples, the pyramids in Orion, maybe Göbekli Tepe's alignment with Cygnus, the Mayan focus on Venus cycles, even the Taurid meteor stream, which some think caused past impacts. The suggestion is that these ancient cultures were highly aware of these cosmic cycles and maybe built these alignments as resonant alerts, like cosmic alarm clocks, for times when instability might return.
And the lion symbol itself seems key to this idea. It's not just about Egypt, is it?
No, not at all. Part 2 really digs into the lion archetype across many cultures, proposing it represents more than just earthly power. It's about celestial resonance, judgment, and recursion.
Okay, examples.
Well, in Egypt, you have Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of solar wrath, divine retribution, and the Sphinx itself, aligned with Regulus. Then in Mesopotamia, you've got Babylonian lion gods, Assyrian winged lions guarding sacred spaces. They call them phase-locking gates.
Like guardians against cosmic chaos.
Something like that. And then you see it in, say, the Bible, the Lion of Judah, or the imagery in the book of Revelation, which some interpret in astronomical terms.
Right.
The document even brings in more esoteric stuff, the Emerald Tablets, Mayan texts like the Chilam-Balam, the Jaguar books, Jaguar being the Mesoamerican lion equivalent. They all seem to hint at the lion or jaguar as a guardian figure tied to celestial cycles and critical turning points.
So the lion becomes this universal symbol, watching the sky for something repeating.
That's the argument. A resonant archetype, watching the heavens for recurrence.
And this implies the ancients saw the stars as more than just pretty lights. They saw them as predictive.
Predictive, or at least indicative. The document suggests they viewed the stars as data points, part of a living system that could help forecast Earth's own rhythms, energetic shifts, maybe even geological activity.
And precession, that slow wobble, is key to this long-term forecasting.
Absolutely. That 26,000-year cycle changes which stars rise at key times, like the equinoxes. And many ancient sites seem oriented to mark specific points within that cycle, tracking the changing ages.
Like the idea of astrological ages or the Great Year. Does the document connect it to things like, say, Regulus moving into Virgo around 2012?
It touches on that, yeah. Not definitively saying this caused that, but exploring the idea that these major shifts in the long-term celestial clock might correlate with civilizational thresholds, periods of change, or even heightened natural activity.
Heightened activity like?
Well, it even posits that certain planetary alignments, conjunctions, and oppositions might act as scalar amplifiers.
Scalar amplifiers, meaning?
Like turning up the volume on underlying Earth processes, potentially influencing seismic activity, volcanism, climate patterns, maybe even mass psychology, collective behavior. Big claims, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. This leads towards that whole return of the gods idea mentioned in the title. Are these myths just stories, or could they be observations?
Part 2 really leans into that question. It looks at myths like the Sumerian Anunnaki supposedly coming from the sky and linked to periodic returns.
Right, Nibiru and all that.
Or the Book of Enoch, talking about the Watchers descending, causing disruption, and their return being tied to judgment cycles. Or Hopi and Navajo prophecies about the red star Kachina appearing as a sign of great change.
So the idea is these gods aren't necessarily beings in spaceships, but maybe recurring celestial events personified.
That's one major interpretation offered, yes. They might be metaphors for predictable astronomical events, comets, perhaps asteroid streams, or maybe even shifts in Earth's electromagnetic field tied to solar cycles or galactic alignment. Or the document keeps possibilities open. Could they represent actual external intelligences interacting cyclically, or maybe harmonic fields? Patterns of consciousness linked to planetary cycles returning. The core idea is something significant returns, cyclically, driven by the sky's harmonic architecture.
Which brings us right back to the Sphinx and Regulus. That lion watches the lion motif. Is that the key?
The second source presents it as a potential key, yeah. A code, almost. Asking the question, were the ancients using this symbol, embedded in monuments aligned with the heavens, to warn us?
Warn us about a cycle, something that resets the cosmic order periodically.
That seems to be the underlying question. There's this undeniable pattern across cultures and millennia. Intense sky observation, monuments aligned with incredible precision, and myths encoding these themes of cycles, destruction, and return.
And the gods might just be names for the phases or the energetic events triggered by these vast orbital recurrences.
That's the provocative suggestion put forward.
Okay, so let's try to pull this together. We've looked at the evidence, pretty strong evidence actually, that the Great Sphinx wasn't just facing east, but was specifically aligned with Regulus, the heart of the lion star.
Right, for centuries around the equinoxes.
Yeah.
Suggesting this dual-focus sun and star and a really sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics in ancient Egypt.
And then we explored the idea from the second source, that maybe this alignment, especially this lion watches the lion theme, was part of a bigger picture. A way to encode knowledge, maybe even warnings about these immense cosmic cycles.
And the potential for recurring celestial events, the returns mentioned in myths.
What stood out as surprising for me, it was the sheer precision, that 800-year consistency of Regulus in that tiny window.
Yeah, the precision is stunning. And also, just how widespread that lion archetype is, connected to the sky, connected to judgment or major events across so many otherwise distinct cultures. That resonance is fascinating.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, why should you care about ancient Egyptians watching stars thousands of years ago?
Well, it makes you think, doesn't it? About our own place in the cosmos. Are there vast cycles at play that maybe we've forgotten how to track? Does it change how we view history or even the future?
It definitely makes you look up differently and maybe wonder if the ancients were tracking these long cycles, if they were embedding warnings, using this lion watches the lion as a kind of key. What might be the next return they're pointing to?
And perhaps more importantly, are we even looking? Are we equipped to understand the message, if there is one?
What does it really mean if the sky, in a way, has been talking all along?
A very powerful thought to leave things on.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us on this very deep dive. Keep sending us those puzzle pieces. We love trying to fit them together.